But when I got kicked out and I was homeless, I had this moment where I actually, for the first time in my life, had no pressure from anybody around me to be a lawyer, and had to survive because I was homeless. And in that moment, this entrepreneurial muscle woke up in my brain for the first time. And I realized that I could have an idea in my head and make it real.
Hello and welcome to Founded and Grounded podcast. Now, each episode, as regular listeners will know, we like to feature an established entrepreneur and to share with you their learnings. My name's Laura Rawlings. I'm one of your co-hosts. The other is Ollie Collard, business startup guru, and we're in two separate locations. So, Ollie, nice to see you.
Lovely to see you this afternoon, Laura.
When you recorded this episode's entrepreneur, it was a slightly different experience to usual for you, wasn't it?
It was. I went on to the recording and Simon was actually live on his TikTok, and he's got literally, I think, millions of followers. And he was like, can we do this as a live podcast on TikTok right now? Everyone's listening. Here's my phone. And I was like, yeah, sure, let's go for it. So normally I record the interviews with featured founders as not live, but obviously we slightly changed it this episode to adapt, and he slightly put me on the spot, but I'm so pleased that he offered that kind opportunity.
Yeah, no, it's great, and great to be shared far and wide on TikTok as well. You've mentioned his name, but let's do the full introduction to who our guest is then, Ollie. Who is it?
Sure thing. So I sat down with Simon Squibb, who is founder of the Purposeful Project. He's actually a serial entrepreneur and angel investor, and he's got decades of business experience.
And his thing is all about sharing business knowledge for free, isn't it? Which absolutely fits into what we're trying to do here at Founded and Grounded as well. But he's kind of the first person who I've heard speak in such a open way about, he's not trying to charge me £1,000 for the knowledge that he has, and that would be fair enough if he wanted to. Like so many, my Facebook gets inundated with these courses and workshops and masterclasses, but here's someone who's coming along and saying, no, actually, this is something that should be open to everybody, whoever you are. It's really refreshing.
It is great to see, and I think obviously he's made his money from all of his previous business successes, and actually now is a point in his career which he simply wants to give back. And he's sharing all of his wisdom and war stories in business that he's learned along that way for free. And he's got a great platform on TikTok, and obviously the Purposeful Project, which we're going to go into a bit more detail about in due course.
We certainly are, yeah. Ollie, just before we do, can I ask, how did you learn about business?
It's a really good question, Laura. I think the origin really was from my mum actually set up a shop called the Bishopston Trading Company, which was a shop in Bishopston in Bristol, and it was selling fair trade organic clothing. So as a child, I'd often spend lots of my days in the shop being curious about what business is and what business terminology meant. And then, I went on to study business at university, international business, and been involved with the startup scene for about 12 years now.
I think it's so interesting, and it's so influential on what you think you'll be able to potentially do as well in the future. And I know we're going to come back to this. So I think we should jump in right now and find out more about how Simon and his team are going to meet their ambitious goal. They have this huge goal of wanting to help 10 million people start and grow a business in the next 10 years, which is impressive. Just how are they going to go about doing this?
I actually retired when I sold my last company, and then I decided to have a son. And when he was born, I wanted to be a full-time father. And actually, I did that for about a year, and then COVID hit, and I was reading about how many people were going to lose their job, and at the same time, I was reading about how much technology is going to disrupt people. So, the long and short of the article was how the Rust Belt in America basically led to the election of Trump, because he promised them a solution that wasn't possible, but going back to coal, and ultimately people need help. And in this article, it talked about how education was broken, how it's not tooling people up for the future, and something kind of went off in my head. And in this article, it talked about, just between cars that are going to be automated and lorries that are going to be automated, and the technology sweep into things like, replacing doctors with technology. So even traditional jobs that you feel, if you become a doctor, you're safe, right? Technology is going to replace the diagnostic system of, say, GPs. And so long short of it, 10 million people in the next 10 years need retraining. And I thought to myself, well, there's a job centre in the UK, but there's no startup centre. Why don't we do what school isn't doing and give people for free the knowledge of business, right? And it is actually like any other discipline. If you become a lawyer, there's a load of things you need to learn. If you become a doctor, there's loads of things you need to learn. Entrepreneurship is actually very similar. It's not really, are you an entrepreneur or not? That's not the question. The question is, what type of entrepreneur are you? Because there's many different types of doctors, there's many different types of lawyers. And we haven't really set out a very clear process for teaching entrepreneurship. What we've done is we've kind of boxed it into MBAs, or frankly, things that aren't really entrepreneurial, because they're looking back instead of looking forward. So that's what we decided to do. I say we, me. I got the permission of my wife to spend £500,000 building this platform, and 2 years ago we kicked off, and we started basically building content initially. Through things like podcasts, as you're doing, bringing knowledge to people. I interviewed the world's most successful entrepreneurs, people that have built billion-dollar companies, on my own podcast called the Unicorn Podcast. And they share how they went from zero to building a billion-dollar company. And that sort of knowledge, and the sort of knowledge that you're providing on your podcast, is what people need initially. They can't get some of these billionaires to be their mentors because they're too busy, but they can listen to their podcasts for an hour, understand their method, understand their process, understand what they did to be successful. And that's where we started, and it just blew up and became this big thing, mainly on TikTok, where I've been on now for 2 years, going live, giving people answers to questions that they have, and giving them knowledge. And yeah, so that's basically the Purposeful Project. Our mission is to help 10 million people start and grow a business and not feel alone doing it. And we never charge for help, and we never will. Very important. We will never, ever charge a course fee. We will never, ever, ever charge people for help. So we do have people that give us donations and support our cause. A lot of people on TikTok been gifting and supporting what we're doing. And we have big sponsors like GoDaddy and Tide, and I'm going to forget someone now, QuickBooks, Taylor Brands, all these big brands that are supporting our mission and helping us produce content. I've got a team of 6 people now that help us make this content, so it's not just me, I should highlight. But yeah, it's very exciting. And the other thing I think that's really exciting, and I know you're doing this too, is community. So entrepreneurs are actually very giving group of people. They're time poor, but if they can help someone get up, they will. Because we all know how hard it is as entrepreneurs to succeed. We all need a little bit of help. No one's self-made. That doesn't exist, that concept of self-made. We all need a little help. So a lot of people in my entrepreneurial network give up their time to do these webinars and teach people things and give mentor sessions. And we have about 200 entrepreneurs right now that contribute to the Purposeful Project and bringing knowledge and support to the community. So that's what we're doing.
If there's one entrepreneurial trait that you could ensure school children are leaving school with, what would that be?
Well, know how to get luck. You need luck to be successful as an entrepreneur. This is not talked about enough because, of course, if I say I'm lucky, people are like, well, we thought you were smart, Simon. We're not buying your book now. We thought you were smart. And so luck almost becomes a word that no one talks about. And so, I mean, there's obvious things like at school, they don't teach you financial literacy. You have to teach yourself this. You have to understand that, if you sell yourself by the hour, there's a limit to the amount of hours in a day. There will always be a limit to your upside, right? Even I know lawyers that as their lifestyle gets more and more elaborate, their hourly rate becomes impossible to manage, and they're working 18 hours a day to pay the mortgage and pay for this and pay for that. So financial literacy is an obvious one, but I think the word I don't think many people tell people, which would be useful, is luck. And you can actually hack luck. Luck is something you can learn. Now, there is 2% of your life, which is random luck, but only 2%. And random luck is where you're born, right? That of course, luck like that is not luck you can control. But 98% of your life is luck you can actually influence, right? And it's influenced 3 ways very quickly. First is The more risk you take, the luckier you get. So a lot of people hear the saying, the harder you work, the luckier you get. That is a lie. That is not true, right? I made more money when I was working less hard because I brought in people that knew what they were doing. And I delegated to people that were smarter than me at certain things, right? So it's got nothing to do with hard work. That is a lie. But what is true is the more risk you take, the luckier you get. Second is persistence. You've got to learn persistence. You've got to learn to follow through. But that is linked to knowing your purpose, which is the third thing, knowing your purpose. And if you know your purpose, which I can describe, I guess, as your destination, what you're trying to achieve, then you will be persistent because the purpose matters to you. And you will take more risk because the purpose matters to you. So the three link together, you combine them, you get more luck. You get more luck, you'll be successful.
I just want to rewind the clock back a bit, because I know at the age of 15, you were made homeless after your dad tragically passed away. I want to know a bit more about your upbringing and how this difficult time in your life has really influenced the person you are today.
Yeah, so I was kicked out of home at 15 by my mum. 3 weeks after my father died, I had an argument with my mum and she kicked me out. And so, of course, that was a very difficult time. But I think I had a couple of advantages when I was growing up. One was that my family were actually generally quite entrepreneurial. But weirdly, both my parents being entrepreneurs, they permanently told me that I was going to be a lawyer. And I remember at 13 years old, someone asking me the wrong question that everybody asks, every kid. They said, what do you want to do when you grow up?
When you grow up, yeah.
And yeah, it's the wrong question. It's the question everybody asks young people, and every single school asks you. It's the wrong question. And I said the wrong answer, which is what I had been told subconsciously by my parents that they wanted. So I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. But when I got kicked out and I was homeless, I had this moment where I actually, for the first time in my life, had no pressure from anybody around me to be a lawyer and had to survive because I was homeless. And in that moment, this entrepreneurial muscle woke up in my brain for the first time. And I realized that I could have an idea in my head and make it real. So I saw someone's house, big house with a messy garden. And I thought, oh, that's weird. Why is that garden messy? Maybe I can offer to clean up their garden and make some money, and just knocked on the door of this big house. Said, hey, my name's Simon Squibb. I've got a gardening company, which I didn't have. I'd like to take care of your garden. They said, oh, great. I've been really busy. Not had time. Sure. How much do you charge? I just made up a number, £200. And they said, sure, thanks. And so this entrepreneurial muscle, this thing in my brain that basically you can have an idea and make it real, woke up. And I guess in my childhood, although I was surrounded by entrepreneurs with my mother and father, they tried to instill something else in me, almost like that was the wrong lifestyle for their son. And it was only in this difficult time was I able to, I guess, wake up to the real me and what I was meant to do. And that's my upbringing. Hopefully that explains it a little bit.
Amazing, Simon, and thanks to you for sort of going into detail about that as well. I know it was a tough time, and often that can shape you as a person and an individual as well. I'm keen to know, what's a commonly held belief or piece of advice that you disagree with, and why?
So many things.
Love it.
There's so many things that people, I think, hold as true that aren't. For example, people believe that working for someone else is easier than working for yourself, right? That is a common belief. People, if you ask them in a survey, 90% of people say it's easier to work for someone else, right? The truth is, it's easier to work for yourself than work for someone else. Why? Because at the beginning of working for yourself, there's definitely a learning curve. No doubt, learning curve. I'm not saying it's easy, but working for someone else is not easy. There's some people that work for bosses that are awful, right? It's not easy. And so, but once you get past the first year, you'll never meet an entrepreneur that wants to go work for someone else again. If you did a survey of 1 year of people working for someone else, what do they want to do? And a survey of someone working for themselves for 1 year and it's sustainable, nearly everybody wants to work for themselves. And that tells you something. And what happens is, once you've got through the pain at the beginning of learning, then you're in control of your own destiny. What time you get up, how much you're going to pay yourself, how many fish you want to give yourself today. You're in charge of the fishing rod. But when you're working for someone else, you're sitting at the cave entrance waiting for someone to bring you a fish, and then you're begging them to give you a bit more fish, and they'll give you a review in 6 months, and maybe they will, maybe they won't. You're not in control, right? And then your bosses change. Even if you have a nice boss, 3 years, they change. and you got to suddenly prove yourself to the new boss. Whereas if you built your own business, you got no one to prove to after 3 years. You built your business, it's working or it's not. So that common belief that working for someone else is easier is a false narrative I wish I could just help people wake up from. And that would just be one. I could go on forever.
I want to know a bit more about your support network, whether that's from a kind of strategic business level or from a more practical emotional support level. Who kind of keeps you firing in all cylinders?
Me. I'm responsible for me. That's important. People need to take responsibility for themselves. No one else can make me happy except me. That being said, I hear this saying all the time, your network is your net worth. I was looking at some university websites recently because trying to understand how the university pitches so we can pitch against them. And a lot of them promise this amazing network if you go to university. And what my experience has been of people that go to university, for example, and get this amazing network is that it sounds like that's the key to the city. But often that network is not linked to your goal later in your life. They're not even linked to your moral code or your mission. And so the best way to build a network in business is have a purpose in the business and then draw people into that purpose. And it's actually pretty quick if you get the purpose right. And so every business I've ever built, I've actually built it based on what the business needs to do. And what was interesting, I remember Fluid going up for a big contract with a big brand. And the other company competing with us was best friends at Eton with the CEO of the company, right? Wow. So you could say, wow, that would be a problem for us, right? It turned out to be a blessing because the CEO had a conflict of interest. So that was a mark against them. So in fact, the network at university went against them, right? And I do think just building a pure network based on pure ability and your ability to deliver is far more powerful than a funny handshake and an understanding of like we went to Eton together. Now I know without getting too controversial, government contracts and stuff. There's been controversy around like the network that went to Eton got some of the contracts. But ultimately, I think generally speaking, my personal experience has been that if you have a better service, you win. And so it doesn't matter who you went to school with. It matters who you've looked after, your reputation, your ability to deliver. And those are the things people need to focus on when building a network. I don't think you need to go and buy a network. Never buy a database, right? Never buy followers. That's another way of looking at it. Like that will never create loyalty. Loyalty comes from building a network based on your purpose. And that takes time, effort, energy, honesty, authenticity, all those things. And then you'll have a network that lasts.
A word about our sponsors. As a founder, cybersecurity isn't top of your priorities. Yet Alliance has identified cyber threats as one of the top 3 risks facing business globally. This is where NovaBlue comes in. Its founder, Steve Mason, was technical director with GCHQ. He was in charge of keeping the nation safe from cyber threats. He set up NovaBlue to help keep businesses safe. NovaBlue are offering Founded and Grounded listeners a free cybersecurity health check. Simply go to nova-blue.co.uk/podcast offer. Tallymarket make it easy for businesses to find and instantly book flexible workspaces. Through their simple platform, you get access to thousands of desks, meeting rooms, and private offices at the best co-working spaces in the UK and beyond. It's free to sign up to, and Tallymarket are also offering 20 free tokens, the equivalent of 5-day passes, when you register and buy 100 tokens. Visit tallymarket.co.uk/F&G for more information.
Right, Ollie, first of all, I'm going to throw a question straight to you because I've never actually considered this, but it is really obvious now. I have heard Simon talking about it. What type of entrepreneur are you? Exactly, your reaction is brilliant. That's what I thought. I was like, oh goodness, I've taken these various personality tests to see what sort of personality I have, but I've never actually considered what type of entrepreneur I am. And apparently there's a whole host of research and people fit into different categories of entrepreneur. It all makes sense. I don't know what they are because I've not researched that much yet, but yeah, what's your take on this?
So I think people fall into a couple of different categories. Some people are kind of accidental entrepreneurs, so they've
Okay.
stumbled upon a business and done it that way and they've fallen into business. Or some people are very analytical, so they've spotted a market opportunity and realised it's a growing trend and they basically want to exploit that market opportunity and set up a business. Some people, and I think this is probably the category that I fall into, are just very passionate about the world of business. They've always known from a young age they've wanted to set up a business. And I think that's probably the category that I fall into. So any of those categories that you kind of fit into, Laura?
Goodness me. So first of all, accidental, definitely. I had to set up a limited company and get going. And then I realised, oh, there are these things that I can do. And I started to see what other people were doing. This is in my sort of journalism hosting kind of role. So that was kind of that part of it. Now I'm not really sure. Because I'm coming from the perspective in terms of being a solution focused hypnotherapist. So this might not answer your question, but it's kind of where I'm at. So I've trained to do this service, which I've been doing and enjoy. And I've realized it would be much, I think, more straightforward to find clients if I was a smaller niche. And so I am, for the first time in my life, kind of thinking more strategically about business and what kind of business I would like. And I'll put my hand up and say, and I know Simon talks about this and we'll pick this up in a moment, but that there are different business models. Now, if you're already someone further down the line, you're just going to be thinking, who is this person? But I think for many people who go from being employed, probably on an hourly basis or on your annual salary, you don't have any idea about the different business models there are, or maybe, you might not have a clue, and you can be forgiven for that because you've never had to think about it. Whereas I'm now starting to think about it. So I don't know what that makes me in terms of what kind of entrepreneur I am. I'm not a serial entrepreneur. I'm someone who's very much still learning and trying to, become a bit more on the front foot as opposed to the back foot when it comes to what I do.
100%, Laura, and I think that probably falls into the other category, which I didn't mention, which is about taking your experience and your passions and then turning that into a business and then actually commoditizing it. And I think, it's very easy for people to fall into the trap of just charging by the hour. But I guess what people should be doing is more thinking about the transformation that they enable their clients to achieve and then actually putting a price on the outcome of that and the transformation rather than simply using themselves as a time for money commodity.
And so let's talk about this a bit more, because that is something that Simon has mentioned there. And I think he says it's about financial literacy. No one is teaching you financial literacy. And I really hope that changes in, schools or colleges or wherever. But I certainly didn't have a clue about any of it. And it wasn't until my diary was absolutely, unfortunately, back to back with clients. So you're seeing as many people as you can see, but you're actually just kind of more knackered because you're working even harder and hold on, you realize there's a ceiling. Now, you might not have thought that, because when you start off, you're like, gosh, I just need to attract clients. I need to have people to work with. And so then you start thinking, well, do I push up my hourly rate or do I go on value? And I can always tell when someone's done a course because they start charging for value and their prices significantly increase. But yes, it's something that he reflected on here, and his keenness to pass on financial literacy, and what a fundamental difference it can make to your business and your income when you do actually get to grips with that. And that's, that's okay. Yeah,
I think it's really important, and I think Simon's right, it's not taught in schools. And I think in schools you're very much taught to, follow the rules and abide, whereas you're actually taught how to think, and actually thinking for yourselves and being sometimes a bit out the box in terms of your thinking is discouraged. And I think sometimes that's where our schooling system falls down.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I was the sort of person who thought, well, I've pleased my teacher, I've done all of this, surely that should be fine. And you get out of school and you're like, hang on a moment, it's different rules out here. This is not how it is. One of the things also that I thought was really, really interesting, and we should definitely pick up on, Simon talked about you need to know how to get luck, and you can learn it. So there's a tiny percentage that is just like, whoa, serendipity, fell out the sky and it could be you, that kind of luck. But he said 98% of life is luck that you influence. And then he went on to talk about the different things that you can do to increase your luck. And I've never really thought of it in that way. But as soon as he said it, I thought, yeah, when I feel like I'm winning at life and business, I am getting out there. And the more I get out there, because that's for me kind of part of a definition of things being successful, the more opportunities, the more people I meet, the more things fall into place, the more you say what you're doing, you find people who are interested. And that is creating your own luck. It's so true, but I'd never heard anyone kind of put it quite like that. What about you, Ollie?
Yeah, I often sort of compare it to being a footballer, like I say, a centre forward. So if a centre forward is very high on confidence, they're trying outrageous things, they don't just think, they do it instinctively.
Yeah.
The more somebody's kind of putting themselves out there, creating these opportunities, the more that's going to fall in their lap. And I also think there's something about actually committing to things and making that public. So
Yeah.
the more you say to somebody, right, Laura, my goal is to achieve X. If you told 10 people about that, you're way more likely to achieve it because A, you've got accountability, but B, you're just putting it out there more. So I think you're creating your own luck by making yourself accountable.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that I could have listened to. I want to go back and look up what he's got on Purposeful, because they've got a whole load of resources on there, all free, which you can look at. And I suggest you do, because I just thought, yeah, okay, it isn't. Because sometimes I think you can look at other people and think, oh, they're lucky. That happened to them because they're lucky. That same thing isn't going to happen to me. Not everyone thinks like that, but some people do. Therefore, this is actually like, no, that isn't how it is. It's not a secret, it's not exclusive, but you can go out and do the same for yourself and just kind of bear these points in mind. So I thought that was great. There was so much in this part of your conversation that I know we're lingering here slightly longer than we might usually for any one part, but um, Simon also commented on a widely held view, one that he disagrees with. So something that lots of people think, but he's like, no, hang on a moment, I'm going to challenge you on that. And this was when he was talking about the view that many people say is easier to work for someone else. Ollie, what do you think? What's your reaction to that?
I think it really depends on what your personality type is, to be perfectly honest,
Mm-hmm.
which is a bit maybe sitting on the fence. But I think if you're somebody that, finds it hard to follow rules and you want to be in charge of your own destiny and, you don't want to be micromanaged and things like that, then being your own boss 100% is the best option for you. But if you prefer a bit more, I guess if you prefer a bit more direction and structure, then sometimes actually having an employer and a boss may potentially be easier. What
Yeah.
about yourself, Laura?
Yeah, I've thought about this many times because I straddle both at the moment, and have done various things throughout my working career. But yeah, for the moment, I'm employed. I'm PAYE and employed and on their books as a staff member. And then I've got other people, which is my self-employed work. So I have moments when I think it would be easier just to turn up to work and do your thing. If you ask me when I'm in the midst of doing my accounts, a job, if you could see my face, it's not one of my favorite jobs. I mean, I always feel super satisfied when I've achieved it, but it is not my forte, and I'm not ready to be able to hand it out to someone else just yet. So there are things that I don't like that go with running your own business, and that when you're still at the stage that you have to do it yourself, it is a royal pain in the behind. So it would be easier just to go and be working for someone else. I think it depends what stage you're at as well in your
100%.
age and stage of life. It's been really wonderful that I have been employed when I had my daughter, because when it came to furlough afterwards and I was self-employed, there weren't the benefits around because it's a new thing. So I think there are certain factors that can influence it. What I liked about what he said is that it just gave me so much hope for sticking with it beyond the initial setup challenges, beyond the stage where you have to do every single job and it really wasn't what you thought you signed up for, but for compliance reasons or whatever, you've got to do it.
Oh.
But he was really encouraging about saying, just keep going with it. and his analogy about, you know, you're going to be in charge of the fishing rod. You're not going to have to go begging at the end of the year for a little pay rise, because guess what? The cost of everything's gone up, you know, or trying to prove your worth again. And I've sat through those meetings, and they are like, can be like pulling teeth, you know, as an employee. Oh no, we don't raise, no, sorry, no, we don't do that, no, never more than like 1%, no, you know, I've sat through all of those. Whereas with this, it's up to you, you know, you crack on. If you've, you know, got the ambition and you found something that works really well and you're excelling, then there is a greater chance of being rewarded when it's your own business. So yes, although with a caveat of it can be tricky as well. So yeah, I do agree with what you said about personality types too. I have to be honest. I'm interested to know whether we really all could be entrepreneurs, or actually whether with the right purpose, or if that's a bit unlikely.
Yeah, I think some personality types aren't suited to potentially being an entrepreneur. And just to pick up on one of your other points, Laura, about the stage of the business as well, because as an early stage business owner, you have to be a bit of a generalist, like you're
Yeah.
wearing so many different hats. But, you know, as the business grows and gets more traction, hopefully there's areas of the business which you're not so comfortable with. And because you've grown the business, you can actually take on staff or outsource particular areas. And that's when business becomes a bit more exciting.
Yeah, definitely. You can focus on, what do people call it? Your zone of genius.
Love that zone
The
of
reason you
genius.
wanted to do it in the first place, you can focus on that bit. Our last comment on this before we move on to the next part, when Simon talks about challenges, just briefly, it is, and this is something that regularly comes up, but it's around support networks. And again, you really see Simon just coming across as someone who is most 100% a leader, definitely, because he was just saying, okay, look, he hears all these things about support networks, but actually it's got to come from within. He's responsible to himself, and then he has a mission and a vision, and he attracts other people to that. That is his way forward. Yeah, which I can see how that works with him, because he's kind of, I could imagine him being quite magnetic with his sort of, it is a really inspiring vision, isn't it, to be able to strike out and do what he wants to do.
And I love this take on this, and it's really refreshing to hear, because I think a lot of business leaders will talk about, you know, the importance of mentors and support networks, which fundamentally you do need to have.
Mm,
But what Simon is saying, that ultimately the buck stops with you. You
mm,
need to be in charge of you. You create your own future. You create your own destiny. And if you're not taking accountability of that as a business owner, that's where you're going to become unstuck. You're going to potentially have a chip on your shoulder if you're not taking accountability. And yeah, I think there's going to be problems later down the line. So I think if anyone's listening to this, who perhaps isn't taking as much accountability as they need to, then take a leaf out of Simon's book.
yeah, I think he'll inspire you. Let's move on to the next part, shall we? So we know that Simon has set up, you know, many businesses. He's made a lot of money from them, but it hasn't all been plain sailing, of course. That's just not how, that's not the story of business, is it? You know, but we like to hear a bit about the challenges and the things that haven't gone so well, which is what you moved on to in the next part of your conversation. Some of those failures.
Oh, I've had so many failures. You know, which one do you want? I mean, for example, just behind me here, there's a comic book that I launched in 2010 called Devashard, and it failed in a magnificent way. I lost £1 million on that business, and it came at a time when I couldn't afford to lose £1 million as well. But it is also one of those things that I still hold when I read and look at with pride, because it's the journey that matters. And the failure taught me a lot of things. I'm not at all. I'm glad the failure happened. I wasn't at the time, but later, when the business did fail, and I had a chance to reflect on why the failure happened, it helped me lead me to success, that failure. And so, yeah, that comic book was a big failure. The premise of the idea I still love a lot. We had this idea: what if Superman landed in China, not America? What if Batman was born in Russia? What would that look like? And it's quite interesting to hear people's, I guess, opinions on what these superheroes would be like based on the country that they ended up growing up in. And so, so that was the premise. And then we had the premise of what if we built the DC and Marvel comics of Asia? So I think we had a lot of the ingredients right around the concept. But unfortunately, through a series of mistakes on my side, it didn't work. But as I say, I actually reflect and I'm glad it didn't. And the reasons it's failed, the reason I'm glad it didn't work out. So yeah, so it all happens for a reason. I actually learned so much from my failures. I always tell people that I was lucky in my wins. Luck played a huge part in my wins. But in my failures, I know exactly what I got wrong, and I know exactly what not to do again.
Fantastic. And can you talk about some of your successes as well along the way, Simon?
Yeah, I guess success is all relative, isn't it? I remember when Jamie Oliver's restaurant chain closed down, everyone was talking about how Jamie Oliver was a failure in the restaurant business. I didn't take it that way because I went to his restaurant 15 and his restaurant 15, which closed down as well, sadly, but that helped hundreds of kids get out of a difficult situation where no one would hire them. There were offenders, a lot of the kids that worked there, and he gave them a chance to build their career and learn something new and get into the restaurant trade. And I think that therefore, if he's helped hundreds of people and then the restaurant closes, it's still a success. And so I've had similar feelings about a lot of the things that I've been involved in. You know, I feel I opened up a cafe and I loved it. It failed, but I still consider it a success because for 5 years we built a community of people that used to go there. I made a lot of friends because of it. So I consider those successes. Equally, I had a company, as you just mentioned, called Fluid, which by probably a traditional metric of how much money I made, it was a massive financial success. And when I sold it, that's what I thought as well. As time's gone by, I actually miss the company. And sometimes my biggest success is sometimes also my biggest regret. I sold the company, but what I also did, and I didn't realize it, was I sold a lot of friendships that people I work with every day suddenly were working for PricewaterhouseCoopers, not with me anymore. Slowly, I tried to bring them into my my new business, but you know, ultimately, you know that it's a success on paper and financially, without doubt, a massive financial success. But I do feel like sometimes, ironically, good luck is bad luck and bad luck is good luck. Just like some successes end up being and feeling like failures, and some failures end up later feeling like successes.
Ollie, one of the things that I can remember learning about and actually getting a name for the very first time in my life, you know, this is like 40 years of existing on the planet and I only realized this then, which is ridiculous. But what Simon seems very good at is what's called a reframe. This is what I use with my clients. It's looking at things differently. So a totally different example might be, oh, for goodness sake, my child has woken me up and it's 4:30 in the morning and I'm absolutely exhausted and I've got all of this work to do today. How am I going to possibly cope?
I've had that a few times, Laura. Yeah.
I knew you'd relate, right? As have I. And so when I've crept out the bedroom, I've then gone, wow, I'm awake at 4:30. No one else is. No one else wants anything. I can actually think about what I'd like to do. I can go for a walk. Goodness me, I could even do some journaling. This literally never happens. I could be one of those people with morning habits. I can eat my breakfast in peace. I can set out my intentions for the day and even achieve my goals before anyone else is up, right?
Love it.
And aren't I lucky to have a child who has woken me up? So that's a reframe. And I get the impression that Simon is great at doing this with his business failures because of the amount that he learns from them. And it's true, when stuff goes well, you don't always know why it's gone well, but when it fails, you probably know why it's failed.
And I think the key point is you only learn when things go wrong, right? So if things are going swimmingly well, then you just carry on doing what you're doing, right? But when things go wrong, you take a moment to pause, reflect, what could I do differently? And like you say, maybe put a different lens on and sort of analyze the situation and take a different approach or a different mindset. And I think obviously Steve Jobs said a great saying about you can only join the dots looking backwards. So it might seem at the time like a failure, but actually that's led you onto a different trajectory or a different path. So I think everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, it's always what you do next. This is the difference between those people who go on to make it. It is the persistence. It is the getting back up and not thinking, well, gosh, I was rubbish, therefore I can't do anything like that. That isn't for me. I sense that, you know, Simon certainly is not in that place where he'd say that, and I'm sure he'd be passing this on to other people, but not taking that failure personally as well. You know, these things are all lessons that you might not know behind success everything that's gone pear-shaped for people. you just might not. You might not know how many times, it went wrong 10 times and then the one time it went right and they struck lucky. I think it's always worth holding on to that, isn't it? It is what you do next when it goes wrong.
100%, Laura. And this is what Founded and Grounded is all about. The stuff that doesn't. This is what Founded and Grounded is about. It's about stripping back the gloss from the world of business and actually uncovering all of the failures and actually encouraging a positive conversation about things that went wrong in business.
Yeah. I think also it makes you think about how success is measured. If you're chasing the money, then what you've got in the bank account at the end of the day is what counts, right? And clearly Simon is in a I'm trying to find the right word because he's worked hard to do this. So for any word I pick, like fortunate position or anything like that,
Yeah.
I don't wish to do down everything he's done to get there. But he is in a position where he can kind of look back in that sort of a way, isn't he, and think differently about how success is measured. But I guess he's had the chance to compare what feels like successful when he's been very successful on paper, financially, and then less so, but felt successful in other ways. It's worth thinking about, what does success feel like for you in your business?
And it's a really important point. And I think you should kind of have three kind of top metrics how you measure success in your business by. So whether one of them is financial, or it's talking about the success of some of your customers, or whether it's talking about the lifetime value of what or whether it's talking about what percentage of customers actually come back and buy again from you, your repeat customers. So I think there's lots of different metrics that you can measure your business by. If you're solely just going off financial, though, I don't think you'll ever potentially be happy because you'll always want more. So I think you've got to balance that with other metrics that are important to you and fit in with your own personal values.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to the next part, the next chunky part of your conversation with Simon. Now, as we've already sensed, he's offered a lot of wisdom and advice in the midst of this podcast, right? But you asked him particularly about taking people on, which I know is a really interesting stage to be at as a business owner, when you're thinking, actually, you're in a position to get some help with your business. And yeah, let's listen to what he says about taking people on, and also where he hopes his business is going to be in the next 5 years.
My life completely changed when I was about 28 from a management point of view. Like, I always wanted to be a manager, and then when I managed people, I found it really hard. I found managing people really hard. And then I basically learned this idea: don't manage people, manage purpose. It transformed everything. So what I started doing was the business had a purpose, and then I would bench strength test people that I interviewed against the purpose. So the idea being that if people really cared about the mission we were on, I wouldn't need to motivate them. I wouldn't need to push them. I wouldn't need to manage them, because and it turned out to be true. I really, from about 30 onwards, I feel like I've had massive companies with lots of people working for me, but I have felt very little stress in managing people. I mean, there's always times when it's hard. People go through personal difficulties, and you want to, build a company that is always empathetic. And it's, we all know the troubles of scaling a business, and everybody needs something day to day. But I think what I found was that none of that mattered if you had a really strong purpose in your company, because people would always find a way of making sure that purpose happened. And I didn't need to be a manager and push people or give deadlines. And even now at the Purposeful Project, we don't set deadlines, we set goals. And Talia, who works with me for 2 years now, sometimes she does that goal in a day. The rest of the week she does what she needs to do. I don't see, it doesn't make any sense to me that it's a 40-hour week, and if you work hard and do well and do it in 12, you still have to work the other 28 hours, right? That doesn't make any sense. People that motivate themselves and do well and deserve to manage their own time. And so the 40-hour week model just doesn't make any sense to me. And that's how I if I'm advising someone on their first employee, make sure your purpose is really clear. Make sure your destination of your business and what you're trying to achieve is really clear. And then hire people, of course, who have the skill set to deliver on what you need, but ultimately care about that purpose as much as you.
Great advice there, Simon. I'm really keen to know a bit more about what the sort of 5 years holds for the Purposeful Project. You've mentioned obviously the 10-year goal of 10 million people, but what else are you going to be doing on top of what you're already doing at the moment?
So I'm excited about the project itself, but also the products that we're building to support the project. So, for example, we've just started a platform called Entrepreneur House. And for anyone listening, if they want to check it out, it's entrepreneurhouse.com. And the whole idea is that a lot of people that want to start a business, one of the issues is that they need money to pay rent, right? And they need money for food. So we thought to ourselves, what if we took that barrier away for 3 or 4 months? And we said, you can come and stay at Entrepreneur House for free. We'll feed you. I'm even trying to convince Jamie Oliver to come and cook for people and stuff like that, and broadcast it to his community, and basically create a place where people can stay and get help. And also, it's like a WeWorks where people can drop in, but again, it's all free. So that's really exciting. We've got the prototype up and running. We bought a house in Tunbridge Wells, for anyone that doesn't know it. It's a nice town, 50 minutes from London Bridge, and yeah, I get excited about things like this. They're not easy to make happen. Big investment, lots of issues with any sort of new pioneering model. A lot of skeptics that you have to deal with along the way. A lot of people that hate you for no reason for trying to do something good. But at the end of the day, I get really excited about having an idea in my head and making it real. Nothing's changed from the age of 15. I saw the problem that people have, and I thought, how cool would it be if we built a place where people could stay for free and get help? And so it's just exciting to me to still be doing that, having ideas. They're just getting bigger. That's all. The ideas are just getting bigger. But the ideas are still the same. They have them in your head and you can make them real. Everything everybody's looking at right now, the laptop, everything in my background, everything in your background was all in someone's head once. And it became real because someone took action. And I love that process.
Ollie, I can't quite believe that it's taken, I don't know how many minutes we are in this, but almost to the end of the podcast to actually pick up on the word purpose. We should have done it at the start. It's like the glaring word is the Purposeful Project, and Simon has mentioned it a few times. But here we are, landing at purpose. There are many books. If you go and walk around a bookshop, you'll see books on your purpose, how to find it, and connect with it, and mission statements and all of these things. But do you have any advice on how to connect to it and make it mean something to you and beyond?
One book that I'd highly recommend is a book called Ikigai, which is a Japanese term. It's basically an island off the coast of Japan called Okinawa. And Laura is holding up a book of it right in front of me. So it's got the population, they've got the highest life expectancy in the world. And it's built on a number of things like whether you're adding value or living your own purpose, whether it's having a meaningful impact, whether you're being paid well to do what you do. And Laura, I'm sure you could add a few to that as well, because the book's in front of you.
Yeah, well, I could. I remember Chris Evans, the DJ, was talking about it, and I always listen when he starts saying stuff, because things that he really loves get totally under his skin and he gets kind of obsessed by it. And that was the first time I heard about this book. And so I thought, well, I need to have a look in here and pick up some of these lessons from Japanese people who are Japanese and over 100. What is the secret to their long life, the things that have made them happy? And yeah, it is fascinating, and I agree with you. And it's a curveball. I wasn't expecting you to say that, because there are many, many books, but you're so right, and as is Simon, about having that, just taking a moment to think about. You can often be thinking, right, well, I just want to make personalized stationery, or I want to I don't know, see this many clients, or, you could have it summed up what you're trying to do in so many different ways, but really thinking about what that purpose is, that bit that makes you excited. And then it becomes about them, and it gives me personally a different sense of a bigger passion for getting on and doing it. That's the bit that
100%.
keeps you going. Even, I mean, I should be more self-motivated maybe, but thinking that I'm doing it for someone else to kind of help other people in the community is a bigger motivator somehow for me.
100%. It's bigger
Um,
than you. It's bigger
yeah,
than you. So the vision, the impact is going to be bigger than just you. So I think, and that's the motivating part, as you're saying, Laura.
yeah. And any kind of shyness that I might have felt at various points of putting it out there, which I think is perhaps not an uncommon sort of feeling when you start to tell those close to you, and they might be like, what, you're going to be doing that? It's like, yeah, but I'm not doing it for me. I'm actually doing it for these people. And I know this will make a difference for them. This is my purpose. And it feels very different. And it feels good. So if you haven't already had that conversation with yourself or with someone else, I do recommend it, thinking about, your purpose. Do I want to add anything else on this? Final observation before we just get Simon's question to you is, and he repeats this several times, and it's just really an observation about how good it is to be part of this community and to really have, if we could all take on a few degrees or a modicum of that self-belief that he has, and that around what a business, what it is to be an entrepreneur. These are people who had an idea and then they put it into action. That's the difference. They take it into action and then it becomes a thing. And the delight at being able to do that and to kind of hang on to that, I think that was one of the most striking things from his conversation, just that joy. I can see how he's set up 17 or however many companies it is, and how he wants to invest as an angel investor in other people's, because it's just that excitement of, someone's had an idea and now we're going to make it a reality. It is possible. Not everyone believes that. He believes that. He believes that of himself and of other people. That's huge, isn't it?
100%, and it's definitely infectious. And I think sometimes you just need that person, whether they're telling you directly or you're just listening to them, to actually say, listen, you can do this. You've
Yeah.
got this. There's going to be, barriers in your head. Maybe it's financial, maybe it's you're scared, or there's some fear there. But whatever that is, you can overcome this. And if somebody else can do it, why can't you do it?
Quite exactly.
In our first episode of Season 4, we spoke with Kelly Fairbrother, co-founder and CEO of Zigzag, who have developed a listen and read book called The X Book to make audiobooks more engaging. The question she asked all of you, our listeners, was what feature should Zigzag launch next? It was really warming to see that 63% of the answer votes were for the option of social and community features. It just shows how important connection and community is to our listeners, and it's such an important aspect of business and everything we do nowadays. So even in reading, this is a really big aspect of what people want. Some of the comments around this answer talked about the big hype of social and community aspects. We're hearing a lot about this in the business world at the moment, and rightly so. So a lot of people are really interested to see what that will look like in this industry. As well as a lot of comments, of course, about how important these features are for engagement too. Following behind that answer was innovate the ebook experience with 25% of the votes. With each of the last two options, including ads to ebooks and other, each with 6%. So it was an overwhelming amount of answers for the community and social aspects around this. So we can't wait to see what Zigzag do with that information and what they bring out next. We'd love to hear your thoughts, opinions, and answers to this week's question too.
Let's have Simon's question to you then. Okay, I said it's a shortie, so get ready because blink and you'll miss it. So this is what Simon would like to ask you.
What is the meaning of life?
Very deep. I love it. We'll try and get some answers to you on that one.
Right, what is the meaning of life? I'm not even going to attempt to answer that in this moment. I need to have a think about it.
I don't blame you.
I feel like I should have an answer ready for that, but I haven't got one that I can just pull from up my sleeve right now. So I'm going to ask you, listening to this, take a moment just to think about that, and do share your thoughts with us on social media. We are on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, find us on LinkedIn. If you just search for Founded and Grounded, I know that you'll find us. So whichever is your favourite platform, take a look and you can share your answer to what is the meaning of life.